My beloved child, I see the way you look at time not with your eyes, but with fear. I see you look at the clock as though it were a verdict, each passing number a small cut to your heart. I see you open your calendar not to live today, but to ask yourself whether you are falling behind. You count your age. You count the years. You count the milestones you believe you should have reached by now. And each time you do not see yourself there, you quietly pass judgment on yourself. You do not say it aloud, but I hear the whisper clearly within you, am I already too late? You carry that question everywhere, even when you are smiling with others. It sits there, smoldering never loud, yet never releasing you. You call it responsibility, but I see it for what it is, the fear of being left behind. You fear that if you do not arrive in time, the door will close forever. You fear that if you are slower than others, I will hand my promise to someone else who was more punctual. You fear that the best version of your life is happening somewhere you failed to enter. You fear that the years behind you have become evidence against you. You fear that every wrong decision you once made has made the clock of grace run faster. And because you are afraid, you begin to run through your thoughts, through comparisons, through sleepless nights. You run even when your body is exhausted and your soul has asked to stop. I see you running, and I also see that you do not know where you are running to. There are moments when you stand in a familiar room, yet your heart feels as lost as if you were at a crossroads. You look around and wonder why everything seems still, while other people's lives keep moving forward. You hear stories of success, milestones proudly displayed, and your heart tightens. You do not envy loudly, you simply withdraw. You ask yourself whether you missed something important without realizing it. You wonder whether I am delaying with you, and in that silence, you begin to believe that silence means failure, that if I am not speaking, it must mean I no longer care. But my child, silence is not when I leave. Silence is when I am standing very close to you. I see you trying to appear calm before others. I see you saying everything is fine while your inner world is tangled. I see you nodding as you listen to advice, while inwardly asking when it will be your turn. You begin to trust your self-doubt more than you trust me. You reanalyze the past as if finding the mistake will allow you to fix the present. You replay old decisions, old crossroads, words you wish you had spoken differently. You do not realize that each time you do this, you are living in a place I never called you to stay in should have. In, if only. In that day, and I am here. In today, waiting for you to return, not to accuse you, but to hold you. You call this pause delay. You call it waste. You call it proof that you are not fast enough, not good enough, not right enough. But I call this space by another name, preparation. I do not prepare you through pressure, but by exposing what you fear most. I let you face the feeling of not having arrived so that you may stop building your worth on arriving early. I let you see that you cannot control timing so that you may lay down a burden I never gave you. I do not need you to run to prove anything to me. I need you calm enough to know that you are still being held. And if you will stop for a moment, you will hear me say this clearly: you are not late in my hands. My child, I do not measure your life by speed. I do not compare you to others the way you compare yourself. I do not look at a clock to decide your value. I look at your heart tired from bracing, from fear, from trying to be on time for everything. I see you trying to wear a garment I have not finished sewing. I see you wanting to step through a door while the hinges within you are still weak. And I know that if I opened it too early, you would call it blessing only to break what I gave you. I do not want you living in what looks right while your soul fractures. I do not want you to receive what you asked for at the cost of losing yourself. So I wait not because I am slow, but because I am loving. There are evenings when you sit for a long time without knowing what you are waiting for. You set your phone down, pick it up again, open a message thread, close it, The to-do list remains like a heavy reminder. You think that if you do a little more, push a little harder, things will finally turn. But the more you push, the more depleted you become, the harder you force, the louder the emptiness inside you grows. I see how tired you are and how afraid you are to admit it, because you believe tired means weak. I see how afraid you are to stop, because you think stopping means losing. You do not yet know that some victories come only when you are willing to stand still, and that there are things I give only when your hands are no longer shaking with haste. I know you have asked me for signs. You have asked again and again whether this is the way. You have wanted a clear sentence, a precise timeline, a confirmation that would reassure you. But my child, there are times when I do not give more information, because information feeds fear. I give you my presence, because presence feeds faith. I want you to learn to recognize me, not only when I speak, but when I am with you. I want you to know that even when you hear nothing, you are still surrounded, and in the space you call delay. I am doing something very real. I am making you ready. You have learned to think that readiness means having enough ability, enough conditions, enough confidence. But I define readiness differently. Readiness is when you stop despising yourself for the years behind you. Readiness is when you no longer need to run in order to be seen. Readiness is when you can rest without guilt. Readiness is when you can sit alone in your room without needing to prove anything to anyone. Readiness is when you trust that I do not miss your life simply because you are not on schedule. And my child, I see these things forming within you, even if you have not noticed them yet. So do not rush to conclude. Do not be quick to label this season a loss. Do not shut a door I have not locked. You are not as late as you think. You are exactly where I am doing the deepest work. You are in the place where I am removing pressures you carried by mistake. You are in the place where I am changing how you see yourself. And when you stop asking when, you will begin to hear more clearly who I am. I am not urging you to run. I am inviting you to remain with me in today, so that I may complete what I have begun. My child, there are evenings when you sit alone long after everything is finished. The light in the room is still on, but your heart grows dim. On the table is a glass of water gone cold. Beside it, your phone lies face down. You have opened it too many times that day, to the point where you are now afraid to look once more. No message brings reassurance. No notification tells you that everything is still on track. Only silence thickens by the minute. And in that silence, you hear the familiar question clearly, am I being left behind? You do not say it aloud, but it sits beside you like a shadow. I am there. I see you sitting with that question, and I do not chase it away immediately. You have grown used to thinking that if I do not answer, it means I am not acting. You did not know that there are things I can only do when you stop asking. I lead you through this slower space not to test how long you can endure, but to see whether you dare remain with me when there is nothing to hold on to except me. Like David in the cave, anointed yet not king, you are living between two callings, one from what I have promised, and one from the emptiness of the present. The cave was not the place where David was forgotten. It was where he learned not to seize the throne with his own hands. And my child, where you are standing now is the same. It is not where I delay, but where I keep you from pushing yourself forward too soon. There are days when you look back at old calendars and see only things that never came to pass. You call that evidence. You use it to conclude that you have failed too many times. But I look at those days the way one looks at a floor that is still wet. If weight is placed on it too soon, it will crack. You do not see the cracks because they have not appeared yet, but I see them ahead of time. I do not want you to step into what I give and then have to hold yourself together with fear. I want you to stand without trembling when you enter. That is why I let the foundation dry. And while you wait, I teach you the hardest lesson of all. You do not need movement in order to be held. My child, I know you are tired. Not the kind of tired that a single night of sleep can fix, but the kind that makes you unwilling to explain yourself anymore to anyone, even to yourself. Your body slows down, but your mind refuses to stop. It circles one question endlessly: if you stop now, will you lose everything? You lie there with your eyes closed, yet your mind runs through scenarios that have never happened. I see all of it. I do not stand at a distance watching. I am very near enough to hear your breathing grow heavier as you think about tomorrow. And I do not blame you for being tired. I only want you to know this exhaustion is not a sign that you are on the wrong path. It is a sign that you have walked too long by your own strength. At times you think that if I truly intended to use you, everything would already be clearer. You long for a jolt, a door flung open, a confirmation loud enough to silence your doubts. But my child, I do not build your life with sudden jolts. I build it with layers of foundation you cannot see. Just as a builder never places pillars while the concrete is still wet, I do not place the weight of tomorrow upon a heart that is trembling with fear today. You see yourself being held back. I see myself holding you back from breaking. And even though you dislike this feeling, I still choose it because I choose you. You watch others move quickly, and when you are tired, that sight hurts even more. You no longer have the strength to compare, yet your heart compares automatically. You tell yourself that everyone has their own rhythm, but deep inside, you still ask why yours is so slow. I know the questions you do not speak aloud because you are afraid to hear them echoed back. I know you once promised yourself you would be patient, but when your body grows weak, patience weakens too. And I do not ask you to be strong right now. I only ask that you not condemn yourself while you are weak, because it is precisely in your weakest moments that I am working most quietly. There is something I want you to see, but I can only point it out when you are willing to slow your gaze. Not every delay is postponement. Some slowness exists to separate you from motives you did not know you were carrying. When you are strong, it is easy to confuse obedience with striving, trust with control. But when you are tired, every disguise falls away. You begin to see clearly what you are afraid of, what you are trying to hold on to, whom you are running for. And I use that very fatigue to make you real, not real in the sense of weakness, but real in the sense of no longer pretending to be fine. My child, I do not need you to make big decisions right now. I do not need you to map out the future while your head feels heavy. I ask only one very small thing of you: stay. Stay in this room, in this breath, in today. David stayed in the cave for a long time, not because I forgot the anointing, but because he needed to learn not to seize what I had promised. And so do you. What I have promised you does not need to be taken by force. It needs you ready enough to receive it without distorting it with fear of loss. If you look back, you will see that things did not turn around when you were straining your hardest. They shifted when you loosened your grip, admitted that you did not know, were not certain, were not strong. But you forget that lesson quickly, because you live in a world that worships speed. The world teaches you that slowness is failure, stopping is falling behind, resting is laziness. But I did not form you by that measure. I formed you to live, not to run. And when I slow you down, I am not taking your future from you. I am giving your soul back to you. You are tired, I know. And because you are tired, I speak more softly, more slowly. I do not pull you to your feet right away. I sit down beside you. I let you lean. I allow you not to understand anything more right now. For the readiness I am forming in you does not come from new understanding, but from your ceasing to resist my care. You are not late. You are simply being held long enough so that when you move forward, you will no longer have to carry this exhaustion with you. When the body weakens, everything that once felt familiar begins to feel frightening. A single day passing without visible progress is enough to tighten your chest. A message that has not arrived is enough for your mind to build entire scenarios. There are mornings when you open your eyes and the first thought is not hope but worry. Will I make it today? Make it to what? You do not even know, only that if today passes like yesterday, the sense of being behind thickens another layer, and that layer is quiet, clinging, unnamed, leaving you weary without knowing why. There are things you once did quickly that now take time. Decisions you once made without hesitation now feel heavy even to consider. You begin to fear your own slowness. You are afraid that if you pause to breathe, everything else will move on without you. Yet within that fear, a truth is revealed. You have lived too long with the feeling that you must keep up, to the point that you no longer know whom you are trying to keep up with. You only know that when you stop, you feel empty, and you hate that emptiness. So you keep running even when you no longer have the strength. The world around you does not help you slow down. It speaks in speed, in achievement, in stories of who accomplished what, by which age. You hear it even when you do not want to listen. Your ears still receive it. You see it even when you do not want to look. Your eyes still catch it. And each time, a voice inside whispers that you are moving slower than allowed. No one needs to say that to you anymore. You have learned to say it to yourself with great skill. You have become the harshest overseer of your own life. At times you think that if you were healthier, stronger, more clear-headed, everything would be different. You think this weariness is an obstacle. But this weariness is exposing something you have carefully hidden. You are not only afraid of being late, you are afraid of not being enough. And that fear does not come from the present. It has followed you for a long time. It learned how to hide behind respectable words like responsibility, effort, ambition. But when your body grows weak, that outer shell can no longer conceal it. The fear stands exposed, stripped of excuses. There are evenings when you look at a very small task and cannot bring yourself to do it. Not because it is difficult, but because you no longer trust that it will lead anywhere. You are afraid of beginning something new only to fail to carry it through. You are afraid of placing hope again, only to face disappointment one more time. So you suspend everything in a state of waiting and call it caution. But inside, you know it is fear. Fear that if you move and still fall behind, the feeling of being late will hurt even more. This is precisely where slowness begins its deeper work. When you no longer have the strength to perform, your true motives start to surface. You see that you once wanted to move fast not only for the sake of the destination, but because you wanted to prove that you were not losing. You wanted to prove that you were still chosen, still worth investing in. And when you no longer have the strength to prove anything, the real question emerges without speed. Who am I? That question unsettles you, because you have never allowed yourself to stand still long enough to answer it. There are things you would never see without slowing down. You would not see how much pressure you have been carrying that never belonged to you. You would not see how much you have lived by the gaze of others. You would not see how accustomed you have become to driving yourself with fear instead of trust. This slowness is uncomfortable because it does not let you escape. It keeps you with yourself, with thoughts you avoid, with feelings you hesitate to name. Yet for that very reason, it is where readiness begins to take shape. There are people in Scripture who lived for a long time in the in-between, not at the beginning, and not yet at the fulfillment of the promise. They remained in a space of uncertainty, where there was nothing to boast about. David lived days when the title anointed did nothing to lessen his loneliness in the cave. Joseph woke up in prison with his dreams intact, while his circumstances remained unmoved. These spaces were not meaningless voids. They were places where ego was worn down, where motives were refined, where a person learned how to stand without a position. You are in a similar space now, even if you do not name it that way. A space that does not feel like moving forward and does not allow you to go back. It simply asks you to remain. And remaining is not what you are good at. You have learned to think of staying as wasted time. But there are things that only form when you stay long enough, like a floor that needs time to dry, like a wound that needs time for new skin to grow, like a trembling hand that needs time before it can hold weight steadily. If you were to step into what you are asking for with trembling hands, you would distort it. You would cling out of fear of losing rather than open yourself to receive. You would live in what is right while your heart remained unsettled, and that would exhaust you more than waiting ever did. Slowness is protecting you from that future. It is doing something you do not like but deeply need, bringing you face to face with your fear of losing control, so that when you move forward, that fear no longer leads you. You may not see yourself progressing, but certain things are leaving you. The pressure to be on time, the pressure to measure up, the pressure to prove yourself. These do not fall away noisily, they leave quietly. Little by little, each time you choose not to scold yourself on a slow day, each time you rest without apologizing, each time you admit you are unwell without calling it failure. These are very small steps, but they are moving in the right direction more than you realize. Readiness does not arrive as excitement. It arrives as a new steadiness within. One day you realize you no longer panic when there is no good news. One day, you find that you can wait without gnawing at yourself. One day you notice that you work not out of fear of being late, but because it feels right for today. These days come without fireworks, yet they mark a deep, quiet, enduring shift. You are not as late as you think. You are being held in the right place so that what cannot carry the weight of your future can leave you first. And this holding back is not a sign of abandonment. It is a sign of careful care. There are afternoons when you stand in the kitchen for a long time waiting for water to boil. The kettle is set down. The flame is on. Yet the water remains still. You look again and again. Lift the lid to check. Then place it back. Not because you doubt that the water will boil, but because you are impatient with the time it requires. You want it faster, because in your mind a list of other tasks is waiting. But if you lift the lid too soon, the heat escapes. If you remove the kettle midway, the water will never boil. Some processes do not tolerate being rushed, and readiness is one of them. It needs enough heat and enough time, not constant interference. On days when you are tired, the house grows unusually quiet. Even small sounds become sharper, the ticking of a clock, the noise of traffic outside, distant notifications from a neighbor's home. These sounds do not calm you, they simply remind you that time is still moving. You lie there thinking about years past, years yet to come, and the sense of being suspended, no longer at the starting point, but not yet touching what you long for. This in-between feeling is uncomfortable because it offers no complete story to tell anyone else. It gives you only a space to sit with yourself. Scripture contains many such in-between spaces between promise and fulfillment. Between the moment Abraham was told he would have a son and the long years when the tent remained silent. Between Israel's exodus from Egypt and the nameless circles in the wilderness. No one remembers each day in those spaces. Yet those unremembered days changed them. The desert does not produce sweetness quickly, but it reveals what cannot be carried. And what cannot be carried must be set down, even when you do not want to let it go. You are also in such a space now. There is less noise, less affirmation. Praise grows sparse. Questions of when grow louder. You begin to feel exposed, because the things that once made you feel safe no longer work the way they did. Achievement no longer covers enough. Busyness no longer fills enough. And in that exposure, you begin to see clearly what you have been leaning on to live. On some days, that realization frightens you, because you discover you have relied on control far more than you thought. There are habits you once called discipline, but now they reveal themselves as fear. You used to wake early, not from peace, but from fear of being late. You worked extra, not from joy, but from fear of falling behind. When your body grows weak, Those motives can no longer hide. They snap into view like elastic stretched too long. And I allow them to surface, not to shame you, but so you no longer have to carry them forward. For if you bring fear into what I give, you will turn blessing into burden. There are evenings when you sit before a blank page and cannot write a single sentence. Not because you have nothing to say, but because you no longer know who you are speaking to. You have grown used to speaking in order to be affirmed, to be heard. But in this slowing, there is no audience, only truth. And truth does not need to be presented beautifully. It only needs to be acknowledged. You begin to see that what you fear most is not being late, but being unnecessary, and that fear cuts deeper than any missed schedule. David knew days like these. After he was anointed, he did not step immediately onto the throne. He returned to old fields, to nights of hiding, to moments of wondering whether the promise still held. There was no soundtrack for those days, no signposts declaring this a necessary chapter of the story. Yet it was in those forgotten seasons that he learned not to use his own hands to force destiny. He learned how to wait without bitterness, and that lesson mattered more than the crown. You are learning a similar lesson, even though you did not enroll for it. You are learning how not to rescue yourself from the feeling of being suspended between places. You are learning how to let silence exist without turning into condemnation. You are learning how to allow a slow day to stop being evidence against you. These lessons come without certificates or clear timelines. Yet without them, you would carry a persistent unease into every place you go. There are moments when you think you are finally about to move forward, only for everything to slow again. You grow irritated. You tell yourself you should be ready by now. But each time, another layer is exposed, an expectation not yet released, a fear not yet named, a pressure you have been quietly carrying. The slowing does not repeat to taunt you, it repeats to deepen the work. And with each deepening, another false layer falls away, even if you do not recognize it immediately. Like a floor that must dry layer by layer and cannot be rushed with fire. Like a crack that must be repaired from within, not hastily plastered on the surface. Like a seed that lies buried for a long time with no visible sign above ground. These images are not comforting when you are impatient, but they are true, and your inner life is operating by that same honest law, not by the schedule you set for yourself. If you move forward now simply to escape this discomfort, you will carry it with you. It will reappear later, when the cost is higher. This slowing is offering you a rare opportunity to face and release what binds you while the price is still low. Not many people are willing to do that. Many choose speed so they do not have to look. But you are staying, even while tired. And this very staying is changing you. Little by little, even if you cannot yet name it, the sense of delay is still there. But it has lost its sharp edge. It no longer commands every decision. It stands now like background noise, while a deeper, slower stability begins to form. And when that steadiness is sufficient, no one will need to tell you it is time. You will know not through excitement, but through a strange calm that says you can now step forward without running. There are mornings when you wake to sunlight already filling the room, yet your body feels as heavy as if the night never left. You rise slowly, your feet touching the floor while your mind still floats. On the table lie medication, a glass of water, unfinished tasks still unchecked. You look at them not with the intention to complete them, but with a quiet question: if today passes like this too, am I falling further behind? That question needs no answer. Its mere presence is enough to drain what little energy remains. You pull your jacket around yourself, not from cold, but from a desire to feel covered. And in that very ordinary moment, you do not realize you are learning a new rhythm, the rhythm of someone who is no longer running. Afternoons stretch longer than usual. The clock neither speeds nor slows, yet time feels heavy. You take a few bites of food and stop, not because you are full, but because there is no taste. The meal cools as you stare out the window, where everything else continues steadily. People pass by. Traffic moves. Life does not pause for your recovery, and that frightens you more than illness itself. You think you are being left behind by the current, but you do not yet know that the true current does not sweep away what must be kept. It only carries off what has no roots. In these days, old memories surface without warning, not the pleasant ones, but moments when you were late, overlooked, told you were not enough. They return like scenes that play without pressing a button. You see again the face of someone who told you to move faster. You hear again the voice inside you, repeating that message more harshly. You do not summon these memories, but weakness thins the defenses, and in the moment when you have no strength left to resist, you begin to see how deeply those words have shaped you. There is an uncomfortable truth that only slowing down allows you to face. You have used speed to avoid confronting the feeling of not being chosen. You have used busyness to avoid sitting with the fear of being replaced. When you were able to keep running, those fears stayed behind you. But when you stop, they stand directly in front of you. There is no distance, no noise to drown them out. They look at you, waiting to be named. And you fear that moment more than any deadline. The desert in Scripture is not only a place without water, it is a place without cover. No walls, no familiar rhythms. Everything lies exposed under the sun. Those who cross the desert cannot carry much, because the weight will kill them before the destination does. You are in a kind of desert like this now, not because you were forced into it, but because the things that once made you feel safe can no longer keep pace with you. And whatever cannot keep pace must be set down, even if you are not yet ready to let it go. There are evenings when you lift your phone only to set it back down again, as if even that small action has become too tiring. You think about messaging someone, checking in, asking, looking for a word of reassurance. Then you stop, because you do not want to hear any more generic replies. You do not need advice right now. You need a place where you do not have to perform. And when there is no one left to perform for, you begin to see how long you have been performing. Performing being okay. Performing being strong enough. Performing being fine. The slow peeling away of those layers of performance does not negotiate. There are people who pass through this stage without ever naming it. They only say that their life turned in a different direction after a stretch no one understood. They do not talk much about that stretch, because there was nothing impressive to tell. Yet it was precisely that untold space that changed them. Joseph in prison did not know he was being prepared to govern. He only knew that each day passed in a sameness that hurt. And if he had forced his way out simply to escape that feeling, the story would have broken at the root. Some roots grow only in the dark. On the days you are tired, you begin to doubt even the things you once believed. Not loudly, but quietly. You wonder whether you misunderstood what you heard, what you prayed for. You fear that you have been holding on to a promise that no longer applies, and that fear weighs more than any physical pain. Yet in that very moment, you do not know that true faith does not grow through certainty. It grows by staying when certainty disappears. There are nights when you fall asleep very early, not because you are sleepy, but because you no longer have the strength to think any further. The sleep is not deep, but it is enough to stop the analysis. And in those half-awake, half-dreaming spaces, a very thin peace begins to appear. Not peace because there is an answer, but peace because you are no longer resisting the question. That peace does not stay long, but it comes long enough for you to know that you have not been abandoned in this slowness. Like dough that needs time to rise and cannot be forced by hand. Like unripe fruit that needs enough sun and cannot be picked early and expected to be sweet. These images do not make you faster, but they keep you from breaking yourself. You begin to see that if you were to step into what you asked for while your soul is still thin, it would tear you apart. And this restraint, uncomfortable as it is is thickening your soul in a way no classroom could teach. There are moments when you want to cry out that you have had enough. Enough waiting. Enough enduring. But each time you think this, another question appears: enough for what? Enough to arrive early, or enough to stand firm? That question does not give you an answer right away. It simply sits there beside your weariness, like a small stone in your pocket, not heavy enough to stop you completely, but enough to keep you from running the way you used to. Slowness is doing one final thing you have not yet noticed. It is changing your criteria. Before, you asked when, now you are beginning to ask how. Before, you asked whether you would make it in time, now you are beginning to ask whether you will be real. These new questions do not give you a sense of control, but they give you something else: honesty. And honesty, though it makes you feel weaker at first, will be the only foundation strong enough to carry the weight of what is waiting ahead. The feeling of being late has not disappeared. It still knocks when you are more tired than usual, but it is no longer the driver. It has become background noise, while another rhythm is forming, the rhythm of someone who does not need to arrive early in order to be kept. The rhythm of someone who can wait without falling apart. And when that rhythm becomes clear enough, you will stand up, not because you are afraid to stay, but because you know you can move forward without betraying what is being formed within you. But here, another fear begins to surface. No longer the fear of being late, but the fear that if you are ready and still nothing happens, then what? This fear is more subtle, because it does not push you to run. It makes you doubt the very process you have walked through. You wonder whether all this slowness truly carries meaning, or whether it is just a way of comforting yourself. And that question hurts more than any comparison before it, because it touches what you do not dare to say aloud: the fear that your life might still remain still, even after you have tried with everything you have. There are evenings when you sit very quietly with that thought. No irritation, no urgency, only a hollowness that is hard to name. You do not want to ask anyone, because you know no one can answer it for you. Familiar answers no longer help. They slip through you like water through your hands. And in that emptiness, you begin to see clearly that what you have been waiting for all this time is not just an open door, but a confirmation that your life has not been wasted. There are people who go through their entire lives with this fear and never stop to look it in the face. They fill every empty space with activity, with noise, with roles. But when everything goes quiet, the fear is still there, intact. You, however, are standing in front of it not because you are braver than others, but because you are tired enough that there are no detours left. And I allow you to stand here, not to make you despair, but so that you stop seeking assurance from places that cannot give it. In Scripture, there are those who had to go very deep through this question. Moses once asked why he was called, only to be placed in 40 years of desert afterward. He was not given an answer when he was young. He was given time, and that time did not make him faster, it made him different. When he returned to Egypt, he did not speak better, nor was he more confident, but he no longer needed to prove who he was, and that very lack of need is what made him able to stand before Pharaoh without trembling. You are being led through a threshold like this as well. Not a threshold of speed, but of ego. A threshold where you stop asking whether you are fast enough, and begin facing whether you are real enough, real with your fear, real with your limits, real with your desire to be seen, to be chosen, to be named. These desires are not wrong, but if you carry them into what I give you without laying them down, they will govern you from within. Some things fall from your hands only when you no longer have the strength to hold them. You have tried to hold on to an image of who you must be, where you must arrive, at what time you must be right. Slowness makes your hands ache, and when your hands ache, those images begin to slip away, not because you decide to release them, but because you no longer have the strength to grip them. And in that moment, You begin to feel lighter in a way no one else can see. You may not realize it yet, but in recent days you have not judged yourself as harshly as before. There are mornings when you accept your weakness without adding a sentence of condemnation. There are small decisions you make, not out of fear, but because they fit today. These changes do not make you move faster, but they make you steadier. And that steadiness is the one thing that will not betray you when something greater arrives. There are days when you feel you have gone deep enough to touch the very bottom of that question, and still nothing seems to change. The panic is no longer there as before, yet there is still no clear light. Slowness now is no longer sharp, it is dull and persistent, like a fine drizzle that stretches on. You cannot run from it, but you also cannot name it peace. It simply remains, forcing you to live hour by hour without knowing what tomorrow will look like. And precisely because you do not know, you begin to notice small things you once passed over, a breath that goes a little deeper than usual, an afternoon that passes without self-reproach, a small decision made without pressure. Those small details do not look like answers. They are more like faint signs, not enough to show anyone, yet enough to keep you standing. You begin to realize that if real change comes, it does not arrive with loud noise. It comes when you stop pushing yourself through each day like an object that must be completed. You begin to live within the day without treating it as a step toward something else. This unsettles you, because you have lived for the next step for so long. Now, when the next step is unclear, you must learn to live in the present one, and that proves harder than you expected. At times you wonder whether you misunderstood the promise from the beginning. At times you think perhaps you were never called to what you once hoped for. These thoughts do not break you, but they slowly thin out hope. You no longer argue with them, you simply let them pass by. And in not arguing, you begin to see something clearly. Your hope had been placed too heavily on outcomes, and too lightly on relationship. When outcomes did not arrive, hope wavered, but the relationship remained. Even in its quietness, there are afternoons when you step outside simply to breathe, not to accomplish anything. You walk slowly, noticing things that continue as they always have. Trees remain where they are, unhurried. Clouds move on, unpressed. You realize that nature does not need to prove progress in order to exist. It simply lives according to the rhythm it was given. That rhythm is neither fast nor slow, it is enough. And a question arises, no longer sharp as before, if everything else is allowed to be enough. Why not you? In Scripture, there are moments when silence lasts so long that those within it think they must have misunderstood. Elijah once waited for fire, for wind, for earthquake, and then discovered the voice in a gentle whisper. That moment did not make him stronger in the way he expected, but it reset the measure. It was not only the great that signaled action, it was not only forceful movement that counted as doing. You, too, are having your measure reset. What you are seeking does not come through pressure, but through stillness. This stillness exposes another truth you have rarely faced for so long. You have equated your worth with being used. When you were not used in the way you imagined, you began to doubt your value. But in this slow space, you begin to sense the worth of being held without performing, held without a reasonable explanation. That is both comforting and unsettling, because it removes a familiar motivation. You no longer drive yourself forward with the fear of losing your place. There are evenings when you look back over your journey and see many stretches that no longer need defending. You stop trying to explain why you are here. You simply accept that you walked the only way you knew how. This acceptance does not make you satisfied, but it does soften your resistance. And when resistance eases, a new kind of space opens, not a space that swallows you, but a space that can hold what you do not yet know. That space is quiet, entirely unlike the emptiness of despair. Those who have crossed this threshold rarely speak much about it. They only say there came a time when they stopped trying to make everything happen. Not because they gave up, but because they realized there are things that happen only when they stop intervening. Joseph did not force the prison door open by his own strength. He remained long enough that when the door did open, he stepped out with an inner life no longer driven by revenge or the need to prove himself. You are moving toward a similar point, where you will no longer carry a list of conditions that must be met for you to feel that your life is right. The tension now is no longer about whether you will make it in time. It is about whether you dare to believe that if what you are waiting for does not happen as you imagine, your life still has meaning. This question unsettles you because it gives you nothing to hold in the future. It forces you to look directly at the present, where there are no guarantees beyond presence itself. And it is here that readiness is tested not through grand actions, but through your willingness to remain without retreating into bitterness. There are days when you feel yourself standing very near an invisible boundary, not a boundary of events, but of the inner life. You have not crossed it yet, but you know you are no longer where you were. The way you look at time has changed. It is no longer a pursuer, but a space in which something is ripening. You cannot yet name that something, but you can feel its weight. It is not light like excitement, it is heavy like truth. And it is precisely at this point when you have gone far enough that you cannot return to the old way, yet not far enough to see the new that all the pressure gathers. There is no room left for easy answers, no room for cheap self-comfort. Only one bare question stands between you and the next step if you are not guaranteed by outcomes. Are you still willing to trust? That question is not loud, but it is weighty. It does not force an immediate answer, yet it occupies the space. You can no longer distract yourself as before. The old ways of escape, staying busier, thinking harder, planning further ahead, no longer work. They slip from your hands like water, and in that emptiness, you realize you are standing before a threshold with no signposts. No one pats your shoulder to tell you this is the right stretch. No one promises that if you step forward, everything will become clear. There is only the sense that if you turn back, you will have to relearn lessons that once cost you dearly. In these days, you begin to pay attention to your own rhythm, not the rhythm of the calendar, but the rhythm of your body. When you try to push faster, your chest tightens. When you allow slowness, your shoulders drop. These small signals are not miracles, but they tell the truth. They tell you that part of you has grown weary from being pulled against the rhythm that was set for you. And when you listen, even just a little, you find that you no longer have to brace yourself to stand. Standing still is also a form of strength you had never given yourself permission to have. There are evenings when you set your alarm early out of old habit, and then turn it off again, not out of neglect, but because you know tomorrow requires a different rhythm. You leave a glass of water on the table, fold your clothes neatly, do very small things that no one sees. These things do not carry you to the destination, but they keep you within the day. And in keeping yourself present with today, you begin to fear tomorrow less, not because tomorrow has become clearer, but because today is no longer abandoned. In the ancient stories, there are moments when people do nothing but stand and look on. Moses, before the Red Sea, stood there, between the cries behind him and the pursuit closing in, with no visible way forward. That moment was not resolved by strategy, but by staying. No one drew a map in advance. The path appeared only when people stopped trying to find a way by their own strength. Such moments are not told at length, yet they decide the direction of an entire life. And you are standing in such a moment now, not with a sea before you, not with a desert splitting open, but with a wall of not yet knowing. You begin to realize that being ready is not a feeling of confidence. It is the acceptance that you do not hold control, and yet you still choose to remain with what is set before you. It does not require certainty, it only asks that you do not run. When you stop seeking reassurance through outcomes, you find something else, small, consistency. Doing what is right today, without knowing what tomorrow will bring. Speaking truth in small matters. Resting when rest is needed. Moving forward when it is time to move. These choices do not make you stand out, but they make you whole. At times you fear that if you accept this rhythm, you will become too ordinary. No more sudden leaps that draw attention. No more stories of making it in time to tell. That fear is real. It touches the desire to be seen, to be recognized, to be named. But here a separation takes place. Either you continue living to be seen, or you learn to live to be held. These two paths look similar at first, but they lead to very different inner lives. And this slowness is forcing you to choose. Even though you dislike being forced, those who choose the second path often do not appear hurried. They do not rush to protect an image. They do not panic when progress is slow, not because they dream less, but because they no longer let their dreams dictate their worth. They move slowly enough not to abandon themselves along the way. That does not make them weak. It makes them difficult to shake. And that steadiness does not come from personal strength, but from having laid the right foundation. Foundation, the word, returns. But it no longer means what it once did. It is not only the foundation of work, but the foundation of self. You built many layers on ground that had not yet been tested. This slowness is doing the testing. Quietly, without applause. Each slow day is a gentle tap, checking whether the ground trembles. Each tremor is a reminder to reinforce, not to quit. And when you choose to reinforce even though it takes time, you are protecting the layers you have not yet built. There are afternoons when you look at your to-do list and choose to cross off one unnecessary item. Not out of laziness, but out of honesty. Honest that you do not need to prove anything today. Honest that some things can wait. Honest that your value is not measured by how many items are completed. These small actions are like placing bricks carefully in their proper place. They do not change the appearance immediately, but they change how the weight is distributed, and that will determine whether you stand firm when the wind comes. The tension you feel now is like a rope pulled to its limit, not to snap, but to reveal its strength. You feel it in your chest, not pain, but weight. Heavy because your old escape routes are gone. Heavy because you are standing very close to the edge of a choice that cannot be made carelessly. You know that if you move forward in the old way, you will betray what has been forming all this time. And if you stay in the new way, you will have to release an image of yourself you once held tightly. In the old stories, the moment before something great happens is often strangely quiet. Not the quiet of an ending, but the quiet of held breath. No signs, no announcements, only a thickening silence. As if everything is waiting for one thing alone, whether you can remain still within that silence, whether you will allow what is being formed inside to be completed, whether you will trust when there is nothing you can point to. The pressure gathers here. There are no easy answers left, no graceful retreat, only a threshold and you stand before it. Tired, yet awake. Awake, not because you understand everything, but because you are no longer running. And just before this threshold, everything pauses for one more beat. Not to tease you, but so that you may step forward with an inner life that has ripened, not one driven by momentum. The silence now is unlike the silences before. It is not empty, but weighty, heavy, not with fear, but with the closing of every escape. You can no longer return to the old way of living without betraying what has taken shape within you. Yet you have not been allowed to enter the new. Two doors stand still, and you are between them. No instructions, no guarantees, only the sense that if you force one open, it will break. You begin to understand that the hardest thing is not waiting, but surrendering authority, surrendering control to a process you cannot manage, surrendering to a hand you cannot see. Before, you waited but still kept the final decision within yourself, if it took too long. You would intervene. Now that option is gone, not because you are forced, but because you have seen enough to know that intervening would damage what is being formed. There is a very fragile moment when you realize you no longer have any arguments left to bargain with. No more if, no more conditions. You no longer say, "If you do this, then I will trust." That sentence falls away naturally without pain, without drama. And when it falls, you stand more exposed than ever, but also lighter, because for the first time, you are not holding a backup plan. What remains now is not certainty, but a simple truth: you are here, and you have not run, not because you are strong, but because there is nowhere left to run without losing yourself. This staying does not look like victory. It looks like someone standing still in the wind, not resisting, not collapsing, simply standing. And it is in that posture that you touch the threshold. At this threshold, all the old questions fall silent. There is no longer when. No longer will I make it in time. There is only one question left. Impossible to avoid. Do you trust that I am who I am? Even when there is no other evidence. That question does not require an answer in words. It requires an answer in your refusal to step back. And right here, everything pauses for one final beat, not to prolong, not to test again. But so what is forming within you can stand firm before it is named. Everything suddenly comes to a halt in a way you can no longer resist, not because you surrender, but because there is nothing left to hold. The reasons that once carried you forward, hope, plans, motivation, slip from your hands all at once. You stand there, emptier than you thought you could endure. And in that emptiness, one thing becomes unmistakably clear: you have been using arriving in time as a condition for believing. When that condition disappears, your faith is tested in a way you never prepared for. This moment is not loud. There is no sound of collapse. It is like the instant you stop trying to keep your balance and realize you are standing on solid ground. You no longer cling to imagined possibilities. You no longer lean on what-if scenarios. There is only one bare truth left: you do not know what will happen next. And for the first time, you do not try to cover that not knowing. You look directly at the deepest fear you once only skimmed past. Not the fear of being late, not the fear of missing out, but the fear that, without proof, you might still choose to believe. The fear that, without outcomes to grasp, you will have to face the question you avoided for so long: do I believe because of what is coming, or because of the one who is here? That question leaves no middle ground. It separates you from every form of half-heartedness. Here, you no longer ask for signs, not out of pride, but because you understand that signs will not resolve what is happening inside you. You stop bargaining. You stop promising. You stop reassuring yourself. You simply stand there with one choice that is both simple and difficult: either return to the old way of living, where you control through fear, or step into a trust that has no guarantee beyond presence itself. This moment does not make you feel stronger. It makes you smaller, small enough that you no longer need to protect your image, small enough that you no longer need to be right. And in that smallness, a truth rises without explanation. What you have been waiting for was not withheld because you were not good enough, but because you were never invited to live without contingency. You realize that if you enter what you are asking for with an escape route always open, you will never be fully present within it. A very quiet breaking takes place. Not a breaking of who you are, but a breaking of the way you have measured your worth. The ruler of early or late slips from your hand. It is not torn away, it is set down. And when it is no longer there, you feel exposed. But not empty, exposed because the labels are gone. Not empty because a presence remains. You do not see a door open immediately. There is no flood of light, no dramatic turning point. Yet a strange steadiness begins to spread from within. Not the steadiness of someone who has arrived, but of someone no longer driven by the fear of failing to arrive. You realize that even if nothing changes outwardly today, you will not return to the old way of living. And you recognize that this realization itself is the moment you have changed. At this point, you understand something you once only heard with your ears. Readiness is not a condition for receiving something. Readiness is the ability to receive without distorting, to remain without fearing abandonment, to move forward without running from yourself. This readiness does not come from trying harder. It comes from having let enough things fall from your hands. This moment has no audience, no applause, no validation. Yet it closes a long chapter you have carried for years, the chapter where you lived as though you always had to arrive in time in order to be held. When that chapter closes, you do not feel rewarded, you feel released. And that release opens a new space, a space where what comes next can arrive rightly. Without your grasping, you are still standing there. Not faster, not slower, but different. And that difference is enough to carry what waits ahead. The silence that follows is no longer tense. It does not force you upright, nor does it push you forward. It simply opens a space wide enough for you to breathe without monitoring every breath. You begin to notice your body before your thoughts. Your shoulders lower without your realizing it. Your jaw no longer tightens when you think of tomorrow. There are mornings when you sit up without immediately checking where you stand in the process, not because the process has vanished, but because it no longer governs every small movement. Ordinary actions return in a different way. You make tea, pour water, open a window. Light no longer startles you, it simply is enough. You eat a simple meal without feeling you must earn it. You move more slowly, not to perform calmness, but because nothing inside is pushing you anymore. These small things do not look like victory, but they carry the scent of home, not a home you built, but a place where you can exist without performing. Some memories that once made you shrink now pass by. They do not disappear, but they no longer command you. You remember the times you ran, hurried, forced yourself. Those memories no longer accuse, they compare. You see clearly how far you have traveled from there to here, not far on an external map, but far in the level of inner tension, and that distance lightens you without needing explanation. In old stories, after decisive moments, people often return to very ordinary tasks. Elijah eats bread, drinks water, and then continues. No sermon attached, no lengthy instruction, only care sufficient to keep the body from collapsing. You are in such a rhythm now, not a time to understand more, but a time to be held, not a time to declare, but a time to remain within the care that is already taking place. You are beginning to see that peace does not arrive after every question has been answered. It comes when you stop demanding answers as a condition for living. Peace does not stand at the end of the road like a reward. It is already beneath your feet, like a foundation. When you place your foot down, you are standing. And when you are standing, you no longer have to feel your way forward in fear. You do not need to know the entire road in order to walk this stretch. That realization surprises you. Because you once believed you had to be more certain before you could truly live, the relationships around you begin to shift very subtly as well. You no longer speak excessively to cover anxiety. You no longer stay silent to preserve an image. You speak less, but more truthfully. Some conversations go nowhere, yet they no longer exhaust you. Some silences do not need to be filled, and you no longer rush to fill them. This quiet does not come from being stronger. It comes from no longer fighting reality. From time to time, the old feeling returns and knocks at the door. It asks whether you are sure you are not late, sure you are not missing something. But the question no longer entangles you. It is simply set down alongside other questions that once wore you out. You do not need to push it away. You allow it to be there and continue doing what is in front of you. And strangely enough, when you do not argue with it, The question leaves on its own. You begin to sleep more deeply, not every night, but enough for you to know that your body is recovering. Sleep is no longer a place to escape, but a place to return. You wake not with a list of tasks, but with a simple sense that today can be lived. That feeling is small, but it is real. And because it is real, it endures. A very quiet trust is forming. Not trust that everything will go according to your will, but trust that you are not abandoned in the things that do not. This trust does not make you careless. It makes you attentive enough to know when to rest, when to step forward, when to wait a little longer. No one else may see a dramatic change, but you do, and you know you are in the right place for this moment. This new rhythm of life is not loud. It does not need to prove itself. It only needs to be lived. And when you live within this rhythm, you no longer have to ask whether you are ready. Readiness is no longer a question, but a state of staying, without haste, without escape, without self-coercion. That state is enough to carry you through the coming days, one day at a time, without needing to see further ahead. If you pause here for a moment, you will notice that what has changed is not the circumstance, but how you are present within it. And that change needs no external confirmation. It speaks for itself through a peace that now resides not coming and going, but remaining, like a foundation set in the right place. There is nothing you need to do that is big right now. No need to make a life-altering decision. No need to declare anything to anyone. There is only one very small thing, just enough to mark that you are no longer standing where you once were. You can pause for a breath and notice that you are breathing differently, not deeper from effort, but lighter because you are no longer bracing yourself. That breath is the first sign of a readiness you do not need to measure. If you wish, you may place a very simple sentence within your heart. Not for explanation and not for debate. You are not late. Not because everything is finished, but because you are exactly where you need to be for this moment. That sentence is not meant to drive fear away, but to keep fear from leading. You do not need to repeat it many times. Just hold it like a small anchor, enough to keep you from being pulled when tomorrow is still unclear. Perhaps someone comes to mind now, a person who is tired, waiting, blaming themselves for feeling slower than others. You do not need to teach them anything. If you choose, you can simply offer a small sign, a short message, a quiet presence, a simple, "I'm thinking of you," not to rescue them, but to remind them they are not alone in their waiting. And if you choose, you may keep this moment as a reminder for yourself not to reread when you are strong, but when you are tired, when the sense of being late knocks again, when you feel the urge to run. In that moment, you will not need to read everything. You will only need to remember that there was a time you stopped, not because you had no way forward, but because you were honest enough to stop forcing yourself. You do not need to know what the next step will look like. You only need to be faithful to the step beneath your feet. The rest is not in your hands, and that is not a loss. It is where you are allowed to rest, and from that place of rest, everything that follows will arrive in the right way, unwarped by fear. For now, you may remain in this rhythm a little longer, not to wait for something to happen, but to allow what has already happened within you to settle and stand firm. That is enough for today. May the word of the Lord continually remind you to live each day in His faith and love. Please subscribe and turn on notifications so you do not miss the sacred and meaningful messages God wishes to share. May God bless you. Amen.